called in a few phone-ins ago. I'll take as many calls as I can, folks. So if you are listening to me, try and keep it brief. Try and keep it to a couple of minutes like Andy did there. And we'll crack on. Caller, welcome to the programme. Who am I speaking with?
You're speaking to Claire.
How you doing, Claire? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Belfast.
Oh, you're in Belfast, are you? Belfast girl.
Yeah.
Claire, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. And, well, you know, the floor is yours. What would you like to say?
Richie, I've been following the stock market for maybe 12 years and, I've lectured in economics for 12 years. And I'm seeing something going on underneath that nobody seems to talk about.
I'm all ears.
There's a problem with the fiat currency, especially the dollar. Now, what happened in September 27th of September 19, the repo market crashed. And since that, they printed 700 billion into the market each night. It crashed again on December 19. And then the coronavirus came along in March. Now, the Federal Reserve have printed 21% of all dollars in 2020.
21%, Claire.
21% of all dollars.
Now, can you, as an economist, as somebody who understands what's really going on, can you explain in layperson's or layman's terms what that exactly means? Why is that something that people should know about?
Because, I tell you what, because if the economy was open, Richie, we would see serious inflation. The only way that you can stop inflation is to stop the economy. Now, once the economy goes again, the velocity of money goes straight back up and we're into hyperinflation.
Is that what you see happening in the event these lockdowns go away?
I can see the figures on a daily basis of what's happening and what the Federal Reserve is trying to do and the Bank of England is trying to do to, they're going to hyperinflate away the currency and bring in the new system, which is going to be the UBI with the digital currency.
Wow.
This is what's happening, Richie.
So explain.
And people really need to be aware of this.
People need to be aware of it. So they'll hyperinflate the currency away. Explain to our listeners what hyperinflation means. What would it mean now for Mr. and Mrs. Joe Bloggs? What would that mean for them, hyperinflation?
Well, it's seeping through the cracks at the minute. It's seeping through in the likes of copper, wheat, wood, but they do, the banks, the central banks, and especially the Federal Reserve, they can't have that seen in food because that shows that your currency is not worth anything. So what will happen if they open up the economy, food prices will, say for example, be up 10% this week, being up another 10% the next week. Hyperinflation just accelerates to the point where the currency, your £10 might be worth £2 in purchasing power.
That could destroy the lives of millions of people, make it basically impossible to live.
Richie, this is why they're going to set up the system that people will be begging for this universal basic income.
Wow, Claire. And can I ask you this? Is this where the idea of debt forgiveness comes in?
This is where the idea for debt forgiveness comes from. They had two choices. They do the debt forgiveness or they inflate away the debt.
You're blowing my mind now.
It looks like they're going for option B, to inflate away the debt.
And you've been looking at this, Claire, now since, I think you said December 2019, you've noticed this. Well,
the problem really happened in 2008 when they bailed out the banks. But here's another thing, Richie. In 2014, the G7, they changed the legislation in 2014 to bank bail-ins, that if the banks crash, which they will do a bank bail-in. Now, a bank bail-in is basically legally the banks can then take deposits, savings.
Yeah.
Legally, they wipe them out.
And you know, Claire, I think I might have mentioned last year when we were right in the middle of this scamdemic, as some of us call it, Ed Conway, the economics editor for Sky News, who also writes a column in the Times, he was actually advocating that when the debt gets so high that it's impossible to pay back, that there should be a one-off wealth tax on citizens, and it should be done. He said it should be done in the middle of the night, didn't he? Do it in the middle of the night so people don't know. Wow.
Yes, and they'll be taking pensions and saying this needs to be used for the debt as well.
See, Claire, if I was the person or persons behind this agenda, that's if you're right, and I suspect you might be right. I think you probably are right. If I was running that agenda, I'd want to get rid of as many old people as I possibly could in the shortest amount of time. No?
Yeah, well, I don't know if this whole vaccine thing is a distraction, because there's so many distractions going on. Let's not look at what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would advise any of your listeners to do is, and you'll see it, even if they followed the price of silver and gold, which was pegged against the currency in 1971. Nixon came on the gold standard in 1971. Since that, we've had a fiat currency backed by nothing.
By nothing.
It's just been printing off. So eventually, what's going to happen is it'll have to go back to sound money, which is silver and gold.
Silver and gold.
Bitcoin is another distraction.
We might very well, Claire, have listeners who might be middle-aged. They might be my age, might be in their 40s, late 40s. And some of our listeners might have a couple of grand in the bank. If they're lucky, they might have a couple of more grand in the bank. I read somebody online the other day who shares your point of view, and he said having that money in the bank is potentially disastrous. You shouldn't just leave it there.
Disastrous. The people who are going to be wiped out mostly is the middle class with savings. With savings. Yeah.
And what about now? People listening to this, they might say the government has promised to back your savings up to £100,000. The government says it will back your deposits. So if your bank goes belly up, what do you think?
No. What they've said is the insurance will back. The insurance company will back up to 85,000, which you have in the bank.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: the economic disaster is going to be that big that the insurance companies are going to go bust.
And the governments will say it's not our fault. Yeah.
No, it's not our fault. And look, in 2013, when it happened in Cyprus, just a small country, and it took 2 years of legal battles for the savers to get. I think it worked out that they got 47% of their savings back. Now you think of that on a massive scale. There's no way any insurance company is going to be able to pay that out.
You're absolutely right. And as I mentioned when I was speaking with Gary in the first hour, our government, Claire, has borrowed the best part of £400 billion so far. Isn't that right?
And nobody talks about it.
No.
Nobody talks about where's this money coming from, how does it work? What does that do for the value of our currency?
I tell you what, Claire, I'd like to get you back on the programme for a longer segment if you fancy it.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about this.
I'm guessing you can, which is why I asked.
I would make your listeners aware of Bitcoin as well.
Now tell us about Bitcoin, because people have been saying to me for years, Bitcoin, I don't like it. Go ahead.
It's done great, but there's a thing called Tether, which it's printed off the back of nothing as well, and that's in for a serious collapse. And I'm even talking this week or next week.
Soon, you mean? So if anybody's got money in that, you're recommending they get it out?
I would get it out. Yeah, and even
Claire is just gone. Wow. I mean, what a fascinating call. I haven't done anything. Now I'm going to see, does the call come back in? I'm still connected to her. Oh, there you are. Thank God. I lost you for a moment there. You just drifted away. You were talking about taking your money out of that. And then
Yeah, but, there's so many hardcore Bitcoin people that they don't want to believe that, but I would advise them, take it out, sit on it for a week, because it's going to go down in the next week, and then see what it's like in a week's time, and I guarantee you wouldn't go back into it.
While I'm talking to you now, I'm going to try and make a note of your number. It's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
If I go back in, don't say it on air. If I go back in and try and get it, what will happen is later on, I won't recognise it because there's been so many people trying to get through. I'm just going to make a very quick note of it now because I'd like you to come back on, Claire. If we could get you onto Skype so we'd have better sound quality. I'd love to have you back on.
I don't do Skype.
Don't you?
No, I'm not. No, I don't do Skype, Richie.
I might persuade you to download it, or we'll find another way of doing it anyway. Or we'll do a landline or something. But Claire, that's fascinating. So you see this then, you see the central banks and the Bank of England using this situation to bring about this agenda that we've talked about so often on this programme, that they're going to basically do away with money.
But Richie, this isn't a cloak and dagger thing. They've no choice.
You've no choice.
They've no choice. It's a 50-year-old problem from 1971. And the fiat currency is coming to an end. And they need to have some other system in place.
Banks are leaving.
And why? And hence the lockdowns. Well, the lockdowns, A, stops the velocity of money, and B, you'll see the riots when people realise that they've lost all their money and that the money's not worth anything.
You see, most of us, of course, don't have anything like £85,000 in the bank full stop anyway. Most of us don't have that luxury. But, you know, you might have 5 or 6 grand. You know, you might have some money saved up for a wedding. You might have money saved up for a child's graduation or for a child's wedding. And all of a sudden you might be told that money is gone. And civil, there will be a civil reaction, Claire, you think?
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be, when people have lost everything, and I mean, even people who have nothing, remember, hyperinflation sets in. God knows what a loaf of bread will be at the end of this. When you've lost everything, you've nothing to lose. And you loot.
My friend,
and you're
my friend.
And here's my concern.
Go on.
The police will lose their pensions as well.
Everybody will lose.
Who are they going to be angry too? So who's going to police this?
You know, there's a utopian end to all of this, but I can't see it happening. And the utopian end is that when the police and the armed forces realise that we're all in this together, being screwed by an evil agenda, that they'll just say utopian. Let's peacefully just throw these arseholes out of their government buildings on their backsides and be done with them once and for all.
That's where I hope it's going. That's where I hope it's going. But unfortunately, we're going to have a lot of hardship. A lot of
in the meantime, let me drop you a message, Claire. It won't be more than a day or two, and because I'd love to have you back on. You obviously know what you're talking about with your economics background, and I think people should hear more of you. Thanks for